I'm a huge sci-fi guy, and I'm sort of like waiting for this and waiting for a movie that would just take things to the next level, but in a way where it's not too much, not too crazy.
Yeah.
It's like a beautiful film for this time and made so well.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, and that's why I'm here to talk to you. Is the first time I saw it, I'm like, I have 1,000 questions for you. I won't ask all of them.
Okay.
But I mean, it's just a lot about. Well, first, how did this originate? Where's the idea come from, and how did you get involved in it?
It's strange because I mean, it's the first film I do that I didn't generate myself from scratch. It's the first film I do that I didn't write the script for. It came to me. I felt I was very lucky to be, to have this, come in my direction. Basically, the types of films I've done before are, more strong social realism. I'm from Ecuador in South America, and the stories that you tell there, there's nothing farther away from science fiction than the stories you tell down there. So I felt that I knew that I was an unusual choice to direct this, but when I read the script, I had been a science fiction fan, as a teenager. I read a lot of sci-fi, I read a lot of Arthur C. Clarke, of Isaac Asimov, of Ray Bradbury, you name it. There was a moment, 2 or 3 years in my life where I was devouring all that stuff. And then, for some reason, I never thought that I would go into that direction as a filmmaker. It seemed too distant. I didn't feel it was realistic for whatever reason.
Right.
And then I read this script. As a couple of the producers had seen my work before, and they were looking, I think, for someone who would have a really good hand at generating tension and would be an actor's director, because it was an ensemble piece with 6 actors within a confined space. They really prioritized that, and also when I read it, I responded really well to the material, and I feel that my pitch to how I would direct this was something that they really connected with. And from the very beginning, when I read the script, I felt that we should really try to shoot this using the fact that there's this conceit, there's the monitoring cameras inside the ship, and what better way to shoot that than to really do a set that would work, in all directions. That would be a 360-degree set. Put cameras all around it. Nowadays that's something you can do. With video technology. It's something that 10 years ago, 20 years ago would have been crazy, but right now it was completely feasible. And actually to shoot the whole movie, at least everything that happens inside the ship, that way, and to really stick to the rules we set out, for ourselves from the very beginning. Not to break. You have so many found footage movies that nowadays use the found footage as an excuse to start telling a story a certain way, but then break all the rules that they set up early on. And as an audience, I feel cheated when that happens in a movie that I'm watching. And I felt, I don't know, I just strongly connected to this. And I felt also that it was a very unusual film in terms of, as a director, you always are striving to somehow leave your mark or make, your style present in the film. And here, I felt that it was more about the film's, what the film demanded than what my own personal style would be. Because, you have ultimately a story that told from a certain perspective. Not only the monitoring video cameras, but then you have basically a company who put together the footage that came back from this spaceship. And it's a footage that could be seen as tragic from one perspective or heroic from another perspective. And this company, they're obviously trying to make the best light out of it without betraying, these heroes who died, or who sacrificed themselves for this great discovery. So suddenly, you're talking about, okay, even when you're editing the film, it's not only my decisions as a director, it's what would the company who was putting this together be doing? What are they using, what are they not using, how would they use music, how would they use different just things for effect, they connect more with the characters, and at the same time, even though you find a way to connect with the characters, it has a distant feeling because you're looking at it only from monitoring cameras. It's a big challenge in many ways, and I found all those elements that I was attracted to all of that. I felt that it would be really cool to be a part of it.
Of course, I love the realism in the way that, like you're talking about with your style, there's no style beyond the style of realism, beyond making it possible, which is something that we don't see so much of in sci-fi. And I know this is like, the discussion that this film has brought up is it's bordering on sci-fi because it is so real. But we see so much sci-fi where even the most minute, like button-pushing detail is overdone into this cool cinematic thing. But this is all about the realism.
Yes, and it was funny because with the production designer, with Eugenio Caballero, who's, we've collaborated before on 2 other films, and those 2 films were very realistic. But they were grounded, they were here on Earth. And suddenly we were talking about, okay, let's, we gotta design a spaceship. What do? You can, it's in the near future, but it's not so far. It should be something that we can connect with, that we feel it's realistic. And the moment you look at all the sci-fi films that deal with space travel, and the vast majority, they're showing you technology that is, that is really cool looking, that is really slick, that is amazing. But then, and that's very valid. But then you start doing real, research as to, what do you find in the International Space Station? What do you find in a space shuttle? What do you find in the real missions? And it's actually, very often you have, technology that feels a little clunky, that doesn't feel so slick, because the main objective of that technology is not to look cool, it's to be functional. If something breaks down in space, if you have like a really thin pad to communicate with back on Earth, which I remember at one point it was a big debate. If we have an iPad here, why wouldn't they have something more sophisticated on the ship? And I was like, well, if that breaks down, the engineer on the ship has to be able to take it apart and fix it. Because then otherwise it becomes completely useless. And when you look at footage of the space station, it's not pretty per se. But you have a lot of wiring and a lot of tubes and everything exposed, because it needs to be practically accessible. So suddenly it's like, okay, we're not, obviously it's gonna feel futuristic, and the ship, I feel, looks gorgeous, but it doesn't have, all this slickness that you would have, with the transparent screen where everyone is touching, and because all that technology is great if you can fix it. One of the first things that one of the people at JPL told us when we started, during our consultations with them and research was, first of all, you need to take a spare part of everything. The main thing in space travel is redundancy. You need 2 of everything. You basically need another spaceship in parts that you can have available if something breaks down. The same thing when you put together a crew. You need 2 pilots, 2 scientists, 2 engineers, because if one of them dies or has a problem, you need to be able to have someone who will replace them. So there's a lot of really great things to work with, and they were cooler than actually saying, okay, let's go and design something really slick.
I love the set, and my question is, what is it, and how did you build it? Is there, because I was watching the moments where they go sort of from one side, which has gravity, through the zero-G middle point to the other side, and I'm wondering, do you have a wire rig through that? Is it this full set built and you're shooting it? Because I couldn't, every time I would see shots like that, I'm like, how is this? How
that's
are you
great.
pulling this off?
That does work. No, it was actually, it was a mixture of techniques. On one hand, we had the living module, which has, artificial gravity because of, through centrifugal force, it's rotating. So basically, that was a set that was just, built with the ladder on top of it. And there was a wire set up on top so that, when you have James, Charlton Copley going up the ladder, and he's doing the tour of the ship, he can go from gravity to zero gravity, and it was, to me, the best way to actually show the process of being in within a centrifugal area that's generating gravity going into zero gravity. So there was a wire work, but on top of the of that ladder, you know, with the, you know, basically that long tube that will connect to the center of the ship. The center part and the other side were added digitally. So basically, what we would do is we would use the same, you know, basically the same tube, the same ladder, to shoot from up, you know, looking down, so that we would then replace that digitally on top, and then the center part that's rotating, that's just built digitally. So where the characters are, you have both perspectives. We're using the same set from the two angles. You know, we're trying to be as resourceful as we can within the constraints, and that actually worked really well. Inside the central part of the ship, where there's zero gravity as they're traveling, each time there's a zero gravity shot, you know, we did it a slightly different way. Sometimes there would be wire work, there would be a character, you know, we shot, you know, in front of a green screen, and then we would place him or her in the space that they were at. There was also what I would call the, you know, our extreme poor man's zero gravity, which was, you know, you'd have a character who's just strapped to a seat, you know, faking, you know, the movement. But next to him, you have another character who's floating, and that's the character who's selling us the zero G. And that character floating actually would be, depending on the shot, you know, laying actually literally on two, like on top of two green yoga balls, with a green man helping, you know, holding his feet. And it's funny because when I was, you know, pitching everyone that idea, I was like, "Are you crazy? And do you really think that's going to work?" And it's actually some of the best looking zero G moments, because it's very simple. You know, it's not flashy, but it's just someone floating next to someone who's strapped to their seat. And because they were all fixed cameras, it was very easy to also. It was a cheap effect. You know, it was easy to remove just the green yoga ball or the green man, because we had plates of the whole environment. And it was probably one of the simplest effects we could do, and the more effective ones as well.
Yeah, I also love the shot, and this is kind of a spoiler, but I love the shot near the end where the guy falls all the way through it.
Yes.
And is that another one that you had set pieces, or did you do actual CGI to pull that off?
When he falls, it's a stunt. It's a mixture of a stunt with, you know, the bottom was, you know, with like a green, you know, green screen with you know, mattresses and whatever protective thing, but it was like an old classic stunt of someone just falling through, and then obviously replace that with a plate of you know, of just the floor of the interior of the ship. But it's a mixture of things. Techniques.
Well, you pull it off. I think. I mean, as is happening here in this conversation, I believed so much of it, and I was so amazed by all of it. I think that was ultimately your goal, it sounds like.
Definitely.
To just make it as real as possible.
Definitely, absolutely.
I guess, well, I love talking about sci-fi, but the question I want to ask for you is, what kind of advice would you give to up-and-coming sci-fi filmmakers, having gone through it and having made something that, at least from a critical standpoint, is incredible?
Well, I think it really depends on what type of film you're interested in making. I mean, I'm surprised. I mean, to me, it's been a huge surprise this past month to see the incredible reaction to the fact that the film is actually grounded on science, and that people are saying, okay, well, I buy it, I believe it, you know, and I think there's actually, you know, I hadn't realized before how little. You know how few of those films are out there. You know, how few films, you know, that are tackling science fiction are embracing also the realism behind it. So, on one hand, I do feel that that's part of, you know, the suspension of disbelief. You know, working is to believe what you're, you know, what you're seeing there, and on my end. It had a lot to do with, you know, with doing the research, with being very thorough. There's so much you can draw from in terms of real, you know, real things that have to do with science or with space travel. That you know, there's just an incredible amount of elements that you can, you know, just take from there. But ultimately, I think it's like in any film, you know, I have a hard time categorizing and saying, okay, this applies just to science fiction.
Right.
Ultimately, you're telling a story, you know, and when telling a story, you have to believe what you're putting on screen. You have to have good characters. You have to have a good development, and then you know the context, the world where that story takes place. You know, that's probably the more crucial thing that has to be believable as well. So it's just really stick to that. I mean, don't sell yourself short. Just, I mean, it doesn't make it more impressive or cooler to just, you know, break the rules. I think the moment you break the rules that you put, that you set for yourself, you know, that it's not like there's a written set of rules. It's the rules for the movie that basically you lay out in the first 5-10 minutes of the film when you're watching it. Your audience knows what they're in for, and if you betray that, then the film falls apart. It's really being faithful to that, you know.
Yeah. Cool. I would ask what's next for you and where you're going, and if we'll see more sci-fi from you in the future.
Well, it's funny. I'm not necessarily looking to do another sci-fi, but I wouldn't mind it if it's a really, you know, cool story. If it's something that I feel will, you know, that I will be challenged by and that I think will be interesting to tell, by all means. You know, I really enjoyed this process. It's been amazing, both as a filmmaker making the film and then seeing the response from people has been wonderful. So I'm definitely looking forward to doing more of it, but not just for the sake of doing sci-fi. It's got to be a great story. And I'm also going to be doing more, you know, realistic, social realism things. You know, I have a good friend who's always telling me, oh, you know, you'll do your stories about South Americans and problems, you know, all your life, but you know, you get a chance to keep doing something cool and you know, beyond your scope like this, keep working on it. And definitely, it's, you know, part of the reasons you go to watch, you know, you go to the movies is to see something that you don't see, you know, in your daily life. So I'm interested in continuing that, but I'll have to keep a balance between the two.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, thank you.